The Balfour Declaration, 1917.
It's 67 words long, it's 100 years old, and it changed the course of history for the Middle East and the Jewish people. The Balfour Declaration, the expression of the British government's support for a Jewish home in Palestine, was sent by British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to the second Lord Rothschild.
So they felt that the Rothschild family should be the one to whom it was addressed. And Walter was Lord Rothschild, and he was a Zionist. And those really are the background reasons.
So Walter received the Balfour Declaration, and I have a copy here. And I wonder if I could possibly ask you to read it for us.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. I'm going to put on my spectacles to make sure I read it accurately. His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment of Palestine as a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. Yours, Arthur Balfour.
And here it is, the Balfour Declaration. What do you feel when you see it here?
I genuinely feel it's one of the most extraordinary moments in the history of the Jewish people. If you think it took 3,000 years to get to this.
The 1948 Arab-Israeli War. The war began after Israel declared independence on May 14, 1948. The next day, 5 Arab countries, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, invaded. The war was fought between the newly declared State of Israel and a coalition of Arab states and Palestinian Arab forces. Lebanon War 1982. The 1982 Lebanon War, also known as Operation Peace for Galilee, was a military invasion by Israel into southern Lebanon that began in June 1982.
We are in the phase of the mopping up operation.
What you're saying is that there's only one way to deal with the PLO, which is...
And then you say, how did this miracle happen?
Israel-Palestine Gaza crisis 2021 present. Hundreds of buildings in Gaza destroyed, including residential towers and infrastructure. Reports indicate that over 52,800 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since the conflict began, approximately 14,000 children and 9,000 women.
It's the most incredible piece of opportunism.
It's becoming a familiar scene in East Jerusalem. Jewish settlers taking over a Palestinian home and dumping the furniture in the garden. They've hired a private security firm to help them, and the Israeli police are standing guard. A Palestinian family built this home several years ago, but they were never allowed to move in. The Israeli authorities said it had been built illegally. Illegal for Palestinians maybe, but clearly a different law applies to Jews, since settlers are now inside. But the Palestinians of East Jerusalem are increasingly finding themselves with neighbours they don't want. Jewish settlers took over this house across the road 3 months ago after a court ruling in their favour. This is the settlers' strategy. House by house, family by family, they're trying to take over the neighbourhood of Sheikh Jarrah. They're doing so with the full cooperation of the Israeli police and the Israeli courts. And it's a pattern that's repeating all over East Jerusalem.
Outside her home, Nora Sublaban shouts that criminals have evicted her and given it to settlers from abroad. Israeli soldiers cordoned off this narrow alleyway in Aqabat al-Khaladiyah in the heart of occupied East Jerusalem. They pushed their way into the Suplaban family's home and evicted them.
Balfour Declaration, this British promise to build a homeland for Jews in Palestine. Now we're going to look at how Britain did that. World War I had been a conflict between rival empires, and the winner set up the League of Nations to distribute the losing side's territories between them. They called it the Mandate System, putting territories once controlled by the Ottoman and German empires under the, quote, tutelage of advanced nations until they became independent. Britain was given the mandate over Palestine, but the Palestinian people were never asked what they wanted or what independence would look like to them. Listen to what Balfour wrote to one of his colleagues.
For in Palestine we do not propose even to go through the form of consulting the wishes of the present inhabitants of the country.
Instead, it was the Zionists who were consulted about what their vision for Palestine was, and so the mandate ended up incorporating not just the Balfour Declaration, but several clauses requiring Britain to ensure the establishment of a Jewish home in Palestine.
Who will bring peace to the Middle East?
For some people, the ultimate goal in life has been becoming the President of the United States. Would you like to be the President of the United States?
I really don't believe I would run it, but I would like to see somebody as the President who could do the job, and there are very capable people in this country.
Most people who are capable are not running for office. Most men are frightened of politics today.
It is a shame, isn't it?
Yes.
It is a shame.
But if all the men are like you, then when are we going to get somebody who might be good?
I don't know. I hope it's around the corner, but I don't know. The country, if we had the one man, and it's really not that big a situation. You know, people say, well, what could anybody do as president? The one man could turn this country around. The one proper president could turn this country around. I firmly believe that.
If you lost your fortune today, what would you do tomorrow?
Maybe I'd run for president. I don't know.
You mean
Donald Trump, the multi-millionaire real estate developer, is sounding more like a politician these days than America's most grandiose and controversial builder. When he disagrees with a matter of policy, he does it in a big way. Today, he sunk $95,000 into a full-page newspaper ad appearing in many papers criticizing the administration's foreign policy. Rumblings in the Trump camp point as far as the presidency. Could the Manhattan magnate be eyeing the White House, or is he just calling a bluff? Are you a Republican, Donald?
I'm a Republican, yes.
So if there were politics, it would be as a Republican?
It would be, I guess, as a Republican, but I don't see that there will be politics.
Right now, a historic moment. We can now project the winner of the presidential race. CNN projects Donald Trump wins the presidency. The business tycoon and TV personality capping his improbable political journey with an astounding upset victory. Donald J. Trump will become the 45th president of the United States.
On June 14th, 1946, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a caretaker. So God gave us Trump.
The Democrats and the fake news media want to constantly talk about, oh, President Trump is a convicted felon. Well, you want to know something? The man that I worship is also a convicted felon.
You think about Jesus Christ himself, everybody went against him because he was preaching love and doing what was right for the people. And Trump's doing what's right for this nation, and because he's doing that, everybody is against him.
He's cast himself as a martyr, compared himself to Jesus.
Just thank God for President Trump. He's the hands and feet of Jesus.
One post linked to a Washington Examiner op-ed titled, The Crucifixion of Donald Trump.
What I was hearing the Lord say was, this is my son, with whom I'm well pleased.
What more can be said than thank God we're here in Sunset Park to worship and bring back the greatest president we've ever known in our generation.
When Jesus was falsely accused of treason, Pontius Pilate gave Jesus the opportunity to face his accusers. During that sham trial, Pontius Pilate afforded more rights to Jesus than the Democrats have afforded this president.
And then I heard Donald Trump will be in power once more. And then I heard he will reign again.
I am the chosen one.
As many of us know, a couple of weeks back, Donald Trump received an award from the Israel Heritage Foundation in appreciation of his efforts to forge normalization agreements between the Jewish state and four Arab nations under the Abraham Accords. The award, a menorah, was presented to the former president at Mar-a-Lago on February 26, and the following inscription was on the plaque at the menorah's base. This menorah, which represents the eternal light of the world, is presented to President Donald J. Trump in honor and celebration of doing what no other man has ever done, and that is to make peace between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan in the extraordinary Abraham Accords. In case you don't remember, last July, the Israel Heritage Foundation presented Trump with the Crown of Jerusalem Award, which was a silver Torah crown contained in a glass box. An inscription quoted Psalm 136:1 and noted Trump's extraordinary and heroic efforts to help the state of Israel and the Jewish people. He will also be involved in the building of the Third Temple. More and more, there are those who are looking at Donald Trump as the one who will build the Third Temple. From a Christian perspective, it's all rather coincidental that the man who perfectly matches how the Bible describes the Antichrist also just happens to be a builder, and also just happens to be the one that many Jews think will build that temple.
Thank you all. And of course, I want to especially welcome Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. Your presence here today is a testament to the importance of this occasion, not only for the Trump administration, but in a very personal way, for you. For you, each of you, for the pursuit of peace, and for President Trump himself. Thank you. Dear friends, what a glorious day. Remember this moment. This is history.
A race for peace and security. Historically, no U.S. president has succeeded in establishing a lasting, complete peace in the Middle East, where all war and conflict ceased permanently. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape.
America today has the best opportunity in this century to achieve two of its greatest ideals: to bring about a full generation of peace, and to create a new prosperity without war.
I can only say that we think it's of maximum importance that continued movement toward peace on a justifiable basis in the Middle East. It's vital to that area of the world and probably to the world as a whole.
Is entitled Framework for the Conclusion of a Peace Treaty between Egypt and Israel.
Now, I am convinced that these proposals can bring justice, bring security, and bring durability to an Arab-Israeli peace.
It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law.
If their intention was to deter us from our mission of promoting peace and security in the Middle East, they will fail utterly.
I speak as a committed friend of Israel. I speak out of a concern for its long-term security. The security that will come with a genuine peace.
I continue to believe that a two-state solution is absolutely vital for not only peace between Israelis and Palestinians, but for the long-term security of Israel as a democratic and Jewish state.
The NATO alliance has been the bulwark of international peace and security.
This is a historic injustice and a critical issue of international peace and security.
Today in the Security Council, we will address yet again the issues of peace and security in the Middle East. Israel is not the problem in the Middle East. Israel is part of the solution. Thank you.
Forging peace between Israelis and Palestinians may be the most difficult challenge of all. All prior administrations from President Lyndon Johnson have tried and bitterly failed. But I was not elected to do small things or shy away from big problems.
Jimmy, let's talk about this peace treaty that, according to the prophet Daniel, the Antichrist is going to sign with the nation of Israel. In Daniel 9:27, we find this information. He, that's the Antichrist, will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7, and in the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. And on a wing of the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. What are we talking about here?
You're talking about, John, seeing the clock start ticking on the 7-year tribulation period. There in Daniel 9:27, he's referring to the 7-year period of time, that 1 week, the 70th week of Daniel. And when he confirms, now listen to that verse again, and he, the Antichrist, shall confirm. That's not talking about signing. That word in Hebrew is gabar. It means confirm, strengthen, make stronger. There are a couple of peace treaties on the table, never been normalized, not working. But when the Antichrist comes on the scene, he will confirm them, strengthen them, make them work, and he will do that between the Jewish nation of Israel and all of their neighbors. By the way, those neighbors, when they see that happening, they will then move to go in and try to destroy the Jewish state. The coalition of nations from Ezekiel 38, Psalm 83, Daniel chapter 11 says, when they are at peace, dwelling safely in the land, that's when that peace treaty is put in place, then they attack the Jewish state. That would be the first 2 seal judgments in that 7-year period of time.
Excuse me, somebody had to do it. I am the chosen one. But the key is a lasting peace. If we have a lasting peace, first thing you have to ask, do they both want to make it? I have a real question as to whether or not both sides wants to make it. I have a real question as to one side in particular, whether or not they want to make it. Well, I don't want to say that right now.
After decades of division and conflict, September 15th, 2020 was a historic day for peace. President Donald J. Trump brokered the signing of 2 peace agreements between Israel and Arab states, the first in more than a quarter century. They were between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and between Israel and Bahrain. Hello, I'm Christian James, a spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State in London, and this is U.S. policy on the Abraham Accords explained. These 2 agreements normalized relations between these nations, establishing regional peace built upon shared interests, mutual respect, and friendship. 5 weeks later, the United States brokered yet a 3rd peace agreement, this time between Israel and Sudan. Collectively known as the Abraham Accords, through these agreements, each country recognizes the importance of strengthening peace in the Middle East and around the world through mutual understanding and respect for human dignity and freedom. The Abraham Accords are a monumental step in creating more opportunities for establishing peace, prosperity, and stability in the Middle East.
Donald Trump's 4-day tour of the Middle East has just wrapped, so here's all of the wild shit
that went down. His first stop was Saudi Arabia on Tuesday, where he secured a massive $600 billion commitment from Saudi Arabia to invest in the US. And Saudi also signed the largest defense deal in history, purchasing a staggering $142 billion of US arms. That same evening, he lifted all sanctions on Syria. Trump explained that he wants Syrians to have a chance at success. And keep in mind how big of a deal that is, because that ends a staggering 46 years of US sanctions. Israeli officials, however, weren't very happy, and they described the move as risky. Trump's next stop in the Middle East, Qatar, was even more groundbreaking because he became the first US president to make an official visit to the nation ever. He received a ceremonial fighter jet escort, he was greeted by camels, and even had a motorcade to the palace that included Cybertrucks and cavalry. Trump particularly likes the camels, though.
We appreciate those camels. I haven't seen camels like that in a long time.
Qatar agreed to a huge deal with Boeing, purchasing 210 jets for $96 billion, the largest order in the company's history. And then the two countries agreed to a deal which the White House described as a historic $1.2 trillion economic commitment from Qatar. And then to top it off, during this visit, he told the press that he wants to take Gaza and turn it into a freedom zone. And there's also talk of Trump signing a nuclear deal with Iran. Not too sure how Israel's feeling about those two either. And then today, Trump visited the UAE for his last stop, where he was given a massive traditional welcome. The US agreed to sell the UAE 500,000 of NVIDIA's most advanced chips every year, which will likely help make the UAE a global leader in artificial intelligence. The Atlantic Council said there has never been a US presidential visit to the Middle East like this one.
What does the world want today more than anything else? Someone who can bring peace to the world, peace and prosperity. And that's going to be his platform and his promise. And he's going to do that for some period of time, but at some point in time, the iron fist inside the velvet glove is going to be unveiled, and he will be the most iron-fisted, egomaniacal leader the world has ever seen.
So while they're celebrating 70 years since they became a recognized state within the world system, something also is happening that hasn't happened over 70 years. Donald Trump has recognized Jerusalem as the capital of the state of Israel. No other president has been so bold to do so, even though others have made the claim they would.
As soon as I take office, I will begin the process of moving the United States ambassador to the city of Israel as chosen as its capital.
Jerusalem will remain the capital of Israel, and it must remain undivided.
But it just so happens, as we come to the 70-year anniversary of the creation of the state of Israel, Donald Trump has declared Jerusalem their capital. This is complete parallel to King Cyrus of Persia. King Cyrus of Persia, leader of the world empire at the time, brought back control of Judah and Jerusalem to the children of Israel. Donald Trump, President of the United States, supposed leader of the free world, is bringing the recognition of Jerusalem to the Israelis for the first time in 70 years. Please understand, none of this is a coincidence. Let me prove it to you. Do you know who Donald Trump is being compared to? Yes, King Cyrus. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This is really happening before your eyes.
So we remember the proclamation of the great king, Cyrus the Great, Persian king, 2,500 years ago. He proclaimed that the Jewish exiles in Babylon can come back and rebuild our temple in Jerusalem. We remember how a few weeks ago, President Donald J. Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Mr. President, this will be remembered by our people throughout the ages.
The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, made the comparison himself, and some others in the American news media are doing the same thing.
Donald Trump recognized history. He, like King Cyrus before him, fulfilled the biblical prophecy of the gods worshipped by Jews, Christians, and yes, Muslims, that Jerusalem is the eternal capital of the Jewish state, and that the Jewish people finally deserve a righteous, free, and sovereign Israel.
Before the 2016 presidential election, some evangelical Christians began comparing Donald Trump to King Cyrus, the biblical king who's credited with allowing Jews to return to Jerusalem from exile in the Babylonian Empire. The idea behind the comparison is that a non-believing leader can be used by God to enact policies that help advance the interest of believers, in this case, Christians and Jews.
They are even putting Donald Trump's face on an Israeli coin to honor him. There was a reason why no other president had made a move like this, though Israel has been America's biggest ally in the Middle East pretty much since its conception. There's also a reason why Donald Trump has made this major declaration. What the powers that be bet on is that we don't know our Bible history well enough to make the parallels. Well, I know none of these events happening is a coincidence. And I know for certain that Elohim did not orchestrate this part of my series to align perfectly on the week of the recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. He has made this part of the series for all with ears to hear to see for yourself that the end times Bible prophecy is approaching shortly. The Israelis have been pleading to rebuild the temple.
And all the monotheistic religions, Christian, Jews, and Muslims, all feel like this is their place of worship. And so it's very controversial of who's going to actually end up on this mount.
Do you think the three religions could share the Temple Mount?
Personally, I don't, but there is a huge movement about coexisting on the Temple Mount. And even recently, within the last 2 weeks, I know of a meeting between Christians and Muslims and Jews who all are talking about what are the possibilities and how could they establish both a temple and a mosque on the Temple Mount.
What kind of plans are being made to build a third temple?
There are actually quite a few, and depending on the group that you talk to, different architectural designs have been made. So one group is doing a design more like Herod's temple, and it would be on the Temple Mount, and I don't believe that they would have a mosque that would be there. There are other groups that are more focused on the design that's given in Ezekiel, chapters 40 through 48, which is the next structure in Scripture that God said to build the temple in this way. And then even some archaeological research has been done recently that would say that the Holy of Holies is not under the Dome of the Rock, which is the most common assumption, but a little bit to the north, and that's why the coexist movement is moving forward, is because it's possible that they could be right next to each other on the Temple Mount.
And with all that is going on between the 70-year anniversary, the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, Donald Trump being paralleled and compared to King Cyrus, as well as the provocation of war with Iran, we are in the midst of true Bible prophecy. If you have been watching this series, Elohim is trying to get your attention, that you need to focus on him right now. There is nobody making all these connections as far as I can tell. And most major Christian media sources are praising all these actions. Nobody else is bringing clarity to all these pivotal, unprecedented events. And if they do talk about it, they're praising the actions. If you remember from part 6 of the series, I explained how the temple is a big deal in Freemasonry. Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, just said that Jerusalem must bring all faiths together.
Jerusalem must remain a city that brings people of all faiths together, to visit, to worship, to respect each other, and to appreciate the majesty of history and the glory of God's creation.
King Cyrus didn't just bring about Judah's return to Jerusalem. He also brought about the beginning of the building of the temple. All the events currently transpiring are moving towards that goal. The only difference this time will be when the Israelis decide to rebuild the temple. Do you remember how the other adversarial nations tried to help the temple? Judah declined their offer. This third temple, the other adversarial nations will offer to help rebuild it, and the Israelis will accept the help, because this third temple will not be built for Elohim, but for the God of all faith, which, if you have been watching this series, leads all the way back to that old serpent, the devil, who deceived the whole world. This is why Jared Kushner said Jerusalem is to bring together all faiths. If you know any Bible prophecy, you know the third temple is a big part of it. And the events of today are clearly a wake-up call for those who know their history. There are no coincidences. This is all about the Antichrist and the one world religion. Everyone keeps saying the same things, but it's like no one is listening. They keep saying Jews, Christians, Muslims worship together.
Over the past 7 decades, the Israeli people have built a country where Jews, Muslims, and Christians, and people of all faiths are free to live and worship according to their conscience and according to their beliefs. Jerusalem is today and must remain a place where Jews pray at the Western Wall, where Christians walk the stations of the cross, and where Muslims worship at Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Jerusalem must remain a city that brings people of all faiths together, to visit, to worship, to respect each other, and to appreciate the majesty of history and the glory of God's creation.
Jews, Christians and Muslims do not worship the same God. Jews and Christians should. But the people that the world refers to as Jews today, that want the temple to be rebuilt, do not recognize Yahshua as the Messiah. They are waiting for another Messiah that better suits them, just like Muslims are looking for their Mahdi. This is all about the one world religion. It's setting the stage for the Antichrist, and this is happening right before your eyes. Listen to their words closely.
La mayor parte de los habitantes del planeta se declaran creyentes. Esto debería provocar un diálogo entre las religiones. No debemos dejar de orar por él y colaborar con quienes piensan distinto.
Confío en Buda.
Creo en Dios.
Creo en Jesucristo.
Creo en Dios, Alá.
Muchos piensan distinto, sienten distinto, buscan a Dios o encuentran a Dios de diversa manera. En esta multitud, en este abanico de religiones, hay una sola certeza que tenemos para todos. Todos somos hijos de Dios.
This part of the series was important because of the parallels it has with current events. Literally, in the same week I'm making this part, these events are happening. And I had no idea that this part would align with these current events until I started making this. I know for certain that Elohim is trying to get everyone's attention that's watching this. I hope he has.